The history of freedom is a history of resistance, and history is made of stories. The three stories that we are about to narrate represent the persecution that the LGBT plus collective suffered during the 20th century just because of their love for someone of their same gender.
This is why they are more than just tales. They are life lessons that portray how prejudices and social boundaries make us turn a blind eye.
I am a lesbian. They tried to cure me because they said I could not escape the animal, but I was brave, especially in the 1920s. I lived in a heavily urbanized area, in Chicago more precisely, where sexuality was more open, so my relationship with Charlotte was not something to be ashamed of. However, I can still hear their songs making reference to us.
It's hard to tell them apart today and say, sister is busy learning to shave, brother just loves his permanent wave. It's hard to tell them apart today. Hey, hey, girls were girls and boys were boys when I was a tot. Now we don't know who is who or even what's what. Knickers and trousers baggy and wide, nobody knows who's walking inside those masculine women and feminine men.
I used to go to the Pansy Club, where I was able to meet people as long as we were discreet about it. That's where I met that beautiful ray of sunshine called Charlotte, and where it all started, until they forced us to hide our sexuality. We were able to evade going to prison, but some of our friends didn't, and we never saw them again since they were declared to have a mental illness. Even Charlotte was forced to undergo electroshock treatment in order to be cured, and she died. And then I decided to join the US Army so as to forget Charlotte's death, but it seemed too good to be true. They discharged me for sodomy, even though they had no proof. The Articles of War stated that any person subject to military law who committed sodomy shall be punished, and in 1920 they made sodomy itself a crime, so I became a criminal. They had given me the blue discharge because I was homosexual. It was dishonorable, and it made me face difficulties in civilian life in the few years I was able to live freely. I got to a point where I didn't know whether being freed was better or worse than being in prison. And I lost myself since I was not able to behave as I wanted to, because I was free, but I was behind bars that society had created.
I can't change. I have no desire to change. Because it took me a long, long time to figure out how to enjoy life. For you'll agree, I'm not going back to what I left. I had been living in Boston since I left home when I was 18. I was not even 20 when Pearl Harbor happened and World War II broke out. I had lost myself by then. I had been attracted to girls for as long as I could remember and wanted that to change more than anything in the world. I didn't want to be that person. I decided to enlist in the army so I could serve and finally do something useful that I could feel proud of. In the recruitment process, they had medical professionals who were trained to spot homosexuals based on their physical appearance and their behavior. My hair was long, I knew how to lie, and I had always been what is considered a feminine woman, so I had no trouble getting in. And the reality was that, once in, it was not as easy to be discharged for homosexual activity as it was in the last decade. However, many of us were. I was spotted kissing Alice, my first and purest love. Homosexuality was considered a psychiatric illness, so we were both locked away in military psychiatric wards, where they performed terrible experiments on us to develop new techniques for identifying other gays and lesbians. I never saw her again. When the war was over, gay and lesbian witch hunts resumed in the military in greatest force than ever. I could not take it anymore. It was hard, but we had to try to escape. And against all odds, some of us did. Military life had made me accept who I was, so I decided I would devote my post-war life to fighting for our rights. I escaped to California. I changed my name and I cut my hair. During the 50s, the Daughters of Abilities, the first US lesbian organization, was founded in San Francisco. I got in touch with them and became completely committed to the cause. I met lots of friends, even lived in a hippie community for a few months. I had the time of my life. I participated in a few pickets in LA and San Francisco. In 1966, we activists for the gay liberation movement organized demonstrations in the main cities of the country to protest the exclusion of homosexuals from the US Armed Forces. After that, I moved to New York with a friend, without knowing that just a few years later, I would live the most intense days of my life. On June 28, 1969, I was dancing at the Stonewall Inn, a gay club in the Greenwich Village. At about 3 a.m., the police arrived and carried out a raid. We couldn't take any more of this shit. So as 3 drag queens and a lesbian girl were forced into the car, we all began throwing bottles at the police. The officers were forced to take shelter inside the establishment, and the protest spilled over into the neighboring streets. Yes, that was the night of the Stonewall riot, which was followed by almost a week of demonstrations in New York. Just a year later, we celebrated the first gay pride marches in New York, LA, San Francisco, and Chicago, commemorating the anniversary of the riots. Now I look back, and God, am I proud to say that was just the beginning.
I was born in a small town in rural England on the 5th of September 1959. From a young age, I knew I was different from my friends and family. I wanted to act, to perform, to make people happy and sad, and most of all, help them escape from their boring lives, at least for a while anyway. I had grown up seeing films with actors like Tab Hunter and wanted to follow their footsteps, hoping to make it one day to the bright lights of American theatre. One surprisingly hot summer morning, I was told by my gay friend, Freddie, that a man had been elected for a city supervisor in San Francisco. This would not have interested me in the least, normally, but the man was called Harvey Milk, an openly gay man. Freddie told me that he was going to move there and that a lot of other gays were doing the same thing, settling in the Castro district. I finally had my chance to be myself and jumped at the idea of accompanying him. We arrived in San Francisco on February and it was all I could have ever dreamed of. Don't get me wrong, we were not accepted openly by heterosexual whites, but we had a place to call home, and the weather was much better than rainy England. That year, 1978, was the year that changed my life forever. I remember the day like it was yesterday, November 21st, as the Americans would say. Freddie came running into the flat saying that Harvey Milk, our hero, had been assassinated, along with the city mayor. I was outraged, full of a combination of grief, anger and fear about what was going to happen to us. We practically went into hiding, only leaving the house to get food and go to work. When the trial went public, on the 21st of May 1979, we were sure that some kind of justice would be done. After all, it had been murder, and those were the charges. Can you imagine our amazement when Dan White, the killer, got away with manslaughter? Phone calls were made, meetings were planned, and all hell broke loose in the city later that day. We wanted to be heard. We needed to be heard. In 1979, Freddie and I went to the Gay Rights Parade which took place in Washington, D.C. The papers said that there were only 5,000 people present, but I was sure that there was at least double that. I went back in 1981, when the march was added. and the estimations were said to be 11,000 people present. But that was nothing compared to the San Francisco Pride that year. 250,000 people celebrating the right to be different. That year was the best one of my life. The following year, Freddie got sick. Doctors didn't know what was wrong with him at first. They just said that he had a serious infection. He died months later from pneumonia. Later, in the news, the doctors came out with the term GRID, or Gay-Related Immune Deficiency. Then in July, the term Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, or AIDS, started going round. The infection was because of gay intercourse, and preservatives reduced the risk of the virus. If only we'd have been better informed, it could have saved my best friend's life.
All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need.
Aquí está María limpiando el incendio, extinguiendo el incendio que hemos provocado, pero no se le ve. Espérate un momento, es que este objetivo.
Veamos. ¿Recibieron ya la droga? Estoy esperando. We were able to evade going to prison, but some of our friends didn't, and we never